Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. We are going to be looking at Unit 4, Lesson 1, starting today. Unit 4, and specifically Lesson 1. Unit 4, Lesson 1 is about identifying some properties of operations. It's going to kind of be a two-part lesson here. We're going to identify some properties of operations, and we're also going to justify those properties. We're going to see our properties of operations through this kind of little foldable. It's going to be available to you online if you would like it. And then you can print it out at home, cut it out, and make kind of a little note page so that when we have to justify them later, you will be able to do that. Kind of some instructions there. Um, so first one we're going to look at here, we're going to look at the commutative property. Okay, commutative property states that in addition, it is A plus B equals B plus A, or a multiplication, AB can also equal A times B can also equal B times A. This states that, and you can write this kind of right here, but I'm going to jump it down here to write a little bit bigger, that order doesn't matter. That's what the commutative property is. In addition, A plus B can equal B plus A as numbers. 1 plus 2 equals 2 plus 1. Both of those would be equal 3. In multiplication, 2 times 4 equals 4 times 2. Both of those equal 8. It doesn't matter the order, just that you get them down and you do the arithmetic. That is the commutative property. Let's go to the associative property. That's our next one here. I moved it out of there just so that I can do some writing on that page, or on that little spot there. Associative property. I'll write that back on there for you. The associative property is working with parentheses. What it says is grouping doesn't matter in certain situations. See, in our first one that we have A plus B in parentheses plus C, which means that I can also do A plus in parentheses B plus C. In multiplication, A times B times C, I can do A times BC, and I would get the same answers. As numbers, if you did 1 plus 2 plus 3 and put those in parentheses, that would be the same as 1 plus 2 plus 3 with those ones in parentheses. Doesn't change. This is 5 plus 1, which is 6. This is 3 plus 3, which is also 6. And down here, if I did 2 times 4 times 6, and I put my A and B in parentheses, that would be the same as 2 times 4 times 6 with those in parentheses. 8 times 6 is 20, 8 times 6 is 48, and 2 times 24 is 48. Same thing. That is associative. Grouping doesn't matter. We're actually going to skip over the distributive property today because we're going to do a whole lesson on that. So don't worry about the distributive property today. So we're going to jump down to what's called the identity property. This is the identity property. This is a pretty good one. I like this one. The identity property states that if you add 0 to a number, it's going to equal that number. Or if you multiply a number by 1, you're just going to get that number. So, and using numbers here, 2 plus 2 just equals 2. 1 times 4 is going to equal 4. It's the identity. Okay? I multiply a number by 1, I get that same number. I get the same identity back. 2 plus 0, added 0 to something, get the identity back. And we say that this sees itself. And if you're looking in a mirror, you're going to get the same thing back as the identity property. Then we have what's called the additive property. The additive property is that It is 0. Additive property equals 0. And what you're doing is you are adding the opposite. Okay? A plus negative A is just A minus A, which equals 0. You can flip it around too. Negative A plus A will also equal 0. This is the additive property. Other examples, 7 plus negative 7, I'm adding the opposite. That equals 0. That's 7 minus 7. Or if you go the opposite way, negative 7 plus 7 equals 0. That is the additive property. And then our last one, which is a little bit more confusing, this one is called the multiplicative. That's a big word, multiplicative inverse. Okay? And what the multiplicative inverse means is that you multiply by the reciprocal. Multiply by the reciprocal. Okay? And how we do that is, so if you think of a number like a fraction, if you have the fraction 1 over 4 and you want the reciprocal, you just flip it over and you say 4 over 1. And you take the bottom number and you move it to the top. You take the top number and you move it to the bottom. It's called a reciprocal. And as you can see in our example here, A over B times B over A. I just flipped them. And that's just going to equal 1 if A or B doesn't equal 0. Because if you have a 0 and you flip it, you might end up with a undefined or a problem that doesn't work, can't divide by 0. Okay, so how that works is another example. If you have the number 2 over 1 and you multiply that by 1 over 2, you flip it, 2 over 1 becomes 1 over 2. You're just going to get 1. And to show how that works, 2 over 1 times 1 over 2, I have to multiply straight across. 2 over 1, 2 times 1 is 2. 1 times 2 is 2, which just equals 1. That's it. Okay, that's a reciprocal. I like to call a reciprocal the flippity flip. Okay, if I want to multiply by a reciprocal, I flip my fraction. That's a little loop-de-loop, not a 2. And I flip it to make it 2 over 1. Okay, if I want the fraction 5/7, and I want to make that the reciprocal, it's going to be 7 over 5. Just flip the number on the top and on bottom. If you have whole numbers, like a number 8, well, that's just going to become 1 over 8, because 8 is just, if we don't know, 8 over 1. And same with number 107. That would be 1 over 107 if I was going for the reciprocal. And that's it for the properties. We're going to go to the next video is going to be about justifying those properties. So please check back for that video. If you have any questions about any of these properties, let me know. Have a great day.